Yeah, what is it all about? Do you have an idea? Why do you need to go and see the stewards?
I don't know. I think it's for... they probably want to understand why I cut the circuit or something like that. I don't know. I seem to be in the stewards quite often nowadays.
On the street circuit, when you lose the brakes, we can only imagine how it is to drive the car. Can you tell us and take it back to that
it's
race?
Pretty gnarly. Yeah, obviously I was feeling really, really positive this weekend. I felt like I've been on it all weekend, and then I got onto that soft tire, and I was attacking to close that 22-second gap, whatever it is. And obviously it got close, and this was like crunch time. I saw my brakes were getting hot, but it didn't say they're at the max. And I went into turn 14, sparks came off, and my pedal went long, and I'm just so grateful, like I still made the corner. And after that, I had to just cool the brakes, and when I started braking for those corners, I just had to cool the brakes, and I wasn't getting the last advantage of cutting, and also I didn't know if anyone was braking deep behind me, so I wanted to get out of the way. So anyways, that was right.
And still P7, that is a mega job.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that was possible, but keeping Fernando behind right at the end was really, really hard.
It was so close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that's the case. Then, can I ask you about the brake issue? We know Lewis had an issue. Were you struggling with the brakes at the end as well?
Oh, not to the end. It's been like that from lap 7 or lap 8 of the race. So I had to manage a lot. And for sure, there's some lap time in it. However, I don't want to blame it all in that, because it's a track where everybody has to manage the brake to some extent. I think Lewis and I probably a lot more than the others, and we paid the price of it. And I think also the fact that maybe Lewis, obviously having more grip with the new tires, was pushing more on the brakes, as it's always the case, and that puts him in a very difficult situation, because when you have the grip and you see the P5, you try everything to get there, and but the brake couldn't handle that. And also on my side, it's been tough.
Can a single race reveal everything that is broken within a legendary team like Ferrari? How serious should chaos be so that even Lewis Hamilton compares your new team with Mercedes so brutally? Ferrari arrived at the Singapore Grand Prix with a clear objective: to claim. After a start of the season with ups and downs, Marina Bay was presented as the ideal circuit to show the true potential of the SF25. The urban, technical, and high aerodynamic track was perfectly adjusted to the strengths of the red car. In Friday's free training, the chronometers confirmed that expectation. Both cars were competitive, with rhythm to be in the direct fight for pole. Lewis Hamilton, who is still in the process of adapting Ferrari, showed clear signs of trust. He declared to feel comfortable. He claimed that they were in the fight for the first rows, and transmitted a positive energy that has rarely been seen in recent years. On the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc visualized this weekend as one of those possible inflection points. During the internal preparation, he had identified the Singapore GP as one of the few dates in the calendar where Ferrari had real tools to fight with McLaren and Red Bull. For him, this was a race marked with red on the calendar. His history in this layout, where he has shown in past classifications, fed that confidence even more. From the first measures of the weekend, his approach was surgical. Return after return, he looked for perfect precision, took care of every detail, calibrated the car as if it were a delicate tool, everything to refine it for the Saturday session. There was no room for errors. This was one of those few windows in the year where Ferrari could not afford to waste an opportunity. Team data also reinforced that feeling of optimism. Internal simulations showed that the SF25 had sufficient speed to be in the first or second row. The intermediate sectors in particular revealed a well-balanced car, with good traction in slow curves and sufficient stability in high-demand areas. Ferrari was not only fast in short batches, so it was in race simulations. Everything indicated that the classification was going to be a true declaration of intentions by Maranello. But that narrative broke brutally upon Saturday. What seemed like a controlled ascension ended in free fall. The classification was an operational disaster. Instead of executing with millimeter precision, as the champions teams do, Ferrari auto-boicotio. Lewis Hamilton went on track at the worst possible time during Q3. With traffic, with tires without adequate temperature, and without the ideal space to prepare his return. At that moment, what mattered was not the speed of the car, but the perfect management of the schedule, the precise reading of the environment, and the ability to adapt under pressure. All that failed. This collapse was not just a technician. It was strategic, human, and structural. The Scuderia failed in the foundations. There was no pilot error, there was no motor failure. It was an incorrect decisions chain, a clear lack of communication between the pit wall and the track engineers, which culminated in a result that left everyone without words. If they were fighting for pole, they went on to the third row. And that, in a circuit like Singapore where to advance is almost impossible, meant anticipated sentence. All preparation work, simulator hours, accumulated optimism during free, vanished in minutes. This act was not simply the beginning of a bad weekend. It was the reflection of a pattern that has been repeating in Ferrari for years. When the critical moment comes, the team does not respond. And this time, with two of the best grid pilots ready to capitalize, they failed again. The opportunity was drained between the fingers, and the most frustrating thing is that it was not the fault of the rivals, of the car, or the climate. It was their fault. After the debacle in classification, Lewis Hamilton was not saved at all. His reaction was not a product of the heat of the moment, but a cold, calculated, and deeply disappointed response for what he lived during that Q3. In a sport where details decide positions, the world heptacampion observed, with a mixture of disbelief and resignation, how Ferrari failed again in the basics. And when he arrived at the microphones, he chose each word with surgical precision, perfectly knowing the weight that his statements had in a team that already drags years of structural errors. His comparison with Mercedes was not accidental or impulsive. It was a direct blow to Ferrari's organizational heart. In Mercedes, they would never have made a basic mistake like this, he said without hesitation. A phrase that hurts because it is not just a technical criticism, it is a cultural criticism. Hamilton did not speak only of the punctual error of leaving the cold tires before his fast return. He spoke of an abysmal difference between two work philosophies, between two ways of understanding what it means to compete on the cusp of motor racing. In Mercedes, each decision is backed by data, simulations, and Fischer communication. In Ferrari, on the other hand, that afternoon seemed to reign improvisation. Moreover, Hamilton deepened the real technical problem behind the disaster. He explained that losing between 5 and 6 degrees of temperature in the tires, just before a quick lap, is practically condemned to failure. In modern Formula One, the thermal window is narrow. A tire that is not at its optimal temperature loses adherence, generates less traction, and forces the pilot to take more risks without reward. Charles Leclerc arrived in Singapore loading not only the pressure of the team, but also the emotional weight of years of frustrations. Year after year, Monegasco has been a direct witness of how Ferrari's potential is wasted in key moments, not due to lack of speed, but for structural failures. And although he has often opted for a more diplomatic profile against the press, which happened after the classification of the 2025 Singapore GP completely broke that facade. For the first time in a long time, we saw a Leclerc on the edge of emotional saturation, unable to contain accumulated frustration. After the last lap in Q3, the gesture was eloquent. Charles hit the steering wheel. It was not simply the reflection of a pilot annoyed by a bad return. It was the desperate cry of someone who feels that his career stagnates, trapped in a team that fails to translate effort into results. Body language said it all. Head down, accelerated breathing, absolute silence for a few seconds. And then the burst by radio. Incredible. Very bad. Shit weekend. There were no filters nor measured phrases. Only raw truth said with the heart in hand. The most alarming thing is that Leclerc's frustration was not just the product of a bad return. It was a consequence of a dyssynchrony between what the team promised and what it finally delivered on the track. Throughout the weekend, Charles tried to adjust the setup, worked hours with his engineers, compared data, sought references. But none of that resulted in real improvement. The car did not respond. The necessary corrections did not arrive. And the feeling of fighting alone, against an erratic car and a system that does not protect it, became unbearable. What happened in the 2025 Singapore GP was not simply a bad career for Ferrari. It was an exact portrait of the existential dilemma that crosses the team. Having two of the most talented pilots of the grill, a competitive car, and still failing by internal errors that seem taken from an amateur category. The statements of Hamilton and Leclerc are not isolated. They are symptoms of a deeper problem, of a structure that still does not know how to operate with the pressure of a championship at stake. And the most serious thing is that this frustration is no longer filtered in rumors or cryptic statements. It is heard on the radio, it is seen in the gestures, it is transmitted in each post-carrier interview. This video is an invitation not only to analyze what failed, but to question us where Ferrari is heading. Can a team that makes such mistakes fight a title against structures such as McLaren or Red Bull, which live to execute surgical precision? Are we facing a momentary storm or before a new failed cycle in Maranello's recent history? The signals are clear, but the answers still uncertain. Do you think Ferrari still has room to straighten the course this season? Or the Singapore thing was the confirmation that, once again, the red car is going far from the podium not due to lack of speed, but due to excess internal chaos? Will Leclerc and Hamilton retain the motivation necessary to continue pushing? Or this type of episodes will mark a before and after in their relationship with the team?